Thank you so much. Good morning to you all, and welcome to the Department of State. We're so pleased to host NATO's Washington Summit's first official WPS event, Turning Vision into Action, Women, Peace and Security Across the Alliance. My name is Geeta Rao Gupta. I serve as the Ambassador at Large in the Secretary's Office of Global Women's Issues here at the Department of State. And on behalf of the entire staff, the Secretary's Office, and all of us, we welcome you to this historic and critical roundtable discussion on women, peace, and security. Before we dive into the discussion, I'd like to invite my friend and colleague, Jennifer Klein, Special Assistant to the President and Director of the Gender Policy Council at the White House, to make a few opening remarks.
Geeta, and before we start, I just want to acknowledge the moment we're in, which is Russia's missile strikes that killed dozens of Ukrainian civilians and caused tremendous damage and casualties. As the President said yesterday, NATO and this country, the United States, stands with Ukraine at this important moment and will continue to do that. I want to begin by thanking the many allies and ministers representing NATO countries and other partners who are joining us for this roundtable discussion. Your presence here is testament to the pivotal role of women in efforts to resolve conflict and achieve sustainable peace and security, and to the importance of addressing the impact that war and instability have on women's lives. I also want to thank my colleagues, Irina Phelan, NATO's Special Representative for Women, Peace and Security, and, as I said, Dr. Geeta Rao Gupta, Ambassador at Large for Global Women's Issues, for hosting this morning's roundtable. And I'm grateful to be here with so many leaders who have long championed the rights and opportunities of women and girls in the United States and around the world. We know that wherever the rights of women and girls are under threat, so too is democracy, peace, and stability. From Haiti, where women and girls are subjected to sexual violence as a tactic of coercion by gangs aiming to impede a democratic transition, to Afghanistan, where the Taliban has imposed draconian restrictions barring women and girls, thereby undermining the country's stability and development, to Ukraine, where Ukrainian women are literally on the front lines of Russia's brutal and unjust war, but where we are again seeing rape used as a weapon of conflict. Each of these examples exemplifies what decades of research confirm. The status of women and the stability of nations are inextricably linked. When women's human rights are protected and women have the chance to fully participate at decision-making tables, societies are more secure, militaries more effective, and peace longer lasting. The alliance that we celebrate this week is built on a foundation of shared democratic values, including respect for democracy, individual liberty, and the rule of law, as enshrined in the Washington Treaty. And pursuant to these values, NATO allies have recognized that women's participation and leadership in peace, security, and decision-making processes are fundamental to the strength of democracies, and therefore critical to NATO's present and future effectiveness. NATO's newly revised Women, Peace, and Security policy, which allies will officially endorse at this summit, provides an important roadmap to achieve this goal. And I want to thank Special Representative Phelan for her leadership in developing this new policy. The updated policy identifies women, peace, and security as central to NATO's core tasks and addresses rising 21st century security threats, including technology-facilitated gender-based violence, the gendered effects of climate insecurity, and conflict-related sexual violence. It also emphasizes the importance of women's leadership and addressing barriers to women's inclusion, retention, and advancement in national militaries. Each of these themes is also reflected in the as priorities in the U.S. Women, Peace, and Security Strategy and National Action Plan, which the Biden-Harris administration released last October and is well underway. I'll just give a few examples. First, our administration has taken historic action to promote women's participation and protection in the U.S. military. As Commander-in-Chief, President Biden has made it a top priority to eliminate obstacles to women's military service, including by advancing military justice reform and expanding support for military survivors of gender-based violence. And under this leadership, rates of sexual assault and sexual harassment in the active duty force have gone down for the first time in nearly a decade. And furthermore, women commanders have risen to unprecedented ranks, including the first woman to serve as the Chief of Naval Operations and on the Joint Chiefs of Staff. Second, our administration has taken important steps to strengthen women's participation in conflict prevention and resolution and to promote accountability for conflict-related sexual violence. For example, we've expanded the Women, Peace, and Security Incentive Fund, which supports women's leadership to help break cycles of conflict and crisis, counter violent extremism, and help build peace and stability. Since its launch, this fund has provided more than $70 million in support to 17 countries, including most recently Haiti, Burundi, Mauritania, Libya, and Armenia. And in 2022, President Biden signed a memorandum on promoting accountability for conflict-related sexual violence, committing to fully exercise U.S. authorities, including sanctions, visa restrictions, and security assistance vetting against perpetrators and enablers of this scourge. Third, we promote stability and security by advancing women's political participation and leadership, including by countering online harassment and abuse. As a commitment from the first Summit of Democracy in 2021, the administration, together with the government of Denmark, launched the Global Partnership for Action on Gender-Based Online Harassment and Abuse to tackle threats against women leaders online, which in turn imperil democracy. The Global Partnership is now 15 countries strong, including our newest member, Finland. And yesterday, alongside many NATO allies and partners, the administration was proud to launch Women Lead, Women Leading Effective and Accountable Democracy in the Digital Age. This $850 million public-private partnership convenes governments, philanthropy, civil society, and multilateral organizations to help close the gender gap in political and civic participation and leadership globally. The administration is committing $150 million to this initiative to build the pipeline of women leaders, counter gender-based violence against women leaders online and offline, and support women's meaningful participation in peace building and conflict resolution. As this initiative demonstrates, collaboration across allied nations and with other partners is critical to our success. To that end, I'm eager to hear from colleagues today about their respective national action plans and hear how we can align efforts under NATO's new Women, Peace, and Security policy. I'm also looking forward to learning from civil society partners as they offer recommendations for its implementation. And I'm especially pleased to recognize that we have taken steps to put the principles of this policy into action. One of the key outcomes for the NATO 75th Anniversary Summit will be the provision of gender-specific uniforms, body armor, and boots for Ukrainian servicewomen. Allies have worked together in partnership with Ukraine using NATO's comprehensive assistance package to supply this non-lethal aid. I'm grateful to the many allies who answered the call to support this request, and of course, particular gratitude to Special Representative Felon, for whom this has been a top priority, and I will say would not have happened without you. Let's celebrate this important outcome as we reflect together on additional ways we can ensure that our new NATO policy on women, peace, and security is implemented with force and fidelity, which in turn will help our alliance meet the 21st century challenges we're facing and advance stability and security around the world. Thank you. It's now my great pleasure to turn it over to you, our NATO Special Representative.
Thank you, Director Klein, for your timely framing remarks. It's my honor now to introduce my colleague and co-host of today's discussion, NATO's Secretary General Special Representative Irene Feline, who will share her opening remarks.
Thank you very much, Ambassador Rao Gupta, dear Gita, and thank you, Director Klein, for being here with me today. But a very warm welcome to our participants to this official high-level event of the NATO Washington Summit. For some of you, it's not the first time. Since I started my mandate in 2022, from Madrid to Vilnius and today here in Washington, we have organized this event on women, peace and security, and I'm very pleased that today we are meeting here in Washington. And we're meeting here in the city where the NATO founding treaty was signed in 1949. And as we look back on the past 75 years of this alliance, we are also laying the groundwork for its future. In an historical moment where increasing strategic competition, pervasive instability, and recurrent shocks define our broader security environment, NATO emerges stronger than ever. In recent years, NATO has gone throughout a process of reflection and adaptation to respond to security challenges and emerging threats. From the new strategic concept endorsed at the 2022 Madrid summit to a new generation of regional defense plans approved at the 23 Vilnius summit, the alliance updated its core policies and shifted its defense posture to be fit for purpose. And in the next couple of days, heads of states and government will also come together to take important decisions on increase our support to Ukraine, reinforce our collective defense, and deepen our global partnership. As part of these important decisions, they will also endorse a new Women, Peace and Security NATO policy. The new policy set a clear vision for the advancement of NATO's WPS agenda, allowing the alliance to better navigate these times of global uncertainty while contributing to a more gender-equal future. I want to share with you 3 key considerations about this new policy, which will set the stage for the future of WPS at NATO. First, the policy centers around the implementation of NATO's 2022 strategic concept and how gender mainstreaming better prepares the alliance to address the evolving security environment. This means mainstreaming WPS into NATO's 3 core tasks, namely deterrence and defense, crisis prevention and management, and cooperative security. Within the concept of deterrence and defense, for example, NATO commits for the first time to advance work on challenges and threats like gender disinformation and technology-facilitated gender-based violence, as it was just mentioned by Director Klein. This can include cyber harassment, hate speech, or video and image-based abuse. It carries not only health and safety consequences, but also political consequences, as it silences women in their online spaces, ultimately diminishing their engagement in public life and democratic processes. When we look at the opportunities and challenges of technologies from drone-related warfare, cyber attacks, and generative AI, NATO will ensure that we are looking at how this impacts diverse segments of the population and focus on our efforts on mitigating any exacerbation of gender inequalities in the work we do. In addition, integrating gender perspectives into NATO's work on resilience and climate change are also specifically noted in the policy for the first time. Engagement with partners as part of NATO's cooperative security efforts remains an important element. This is not just about what NATO can provide to partners, but what NATO can learn from partner experiences. While centering WPS around the core of NATO's work, we remain mindful that NATO is one of the actors within a global women, peace and security community. For example, strengthened engagement with women civil society actors at both political and operational level remains an important component of the policy and one of my personal priorities. It connects us with the foundation of the WPS agenda, and this engagement can improve our decision-making at the political level and increase our operational effectiveness in operation and mission settings. I'm particularly glad of the presence of civil society representatives in this room today, including members of the NATO Women, Peace and Security Civil Society Advisory Panel. We started a new cooperation at the beginning of this year that included consultation for the drafting of the new policy. I benefited from your insights and expertise, as well as from your constructive criticism that will help us doing our work better, and I'm looking forward to continue engaging with you in the years to come. The second consideration I would like to share with you relates to the policy, more direct alignment with the 4 pillars of the global WPS agenda, namely participation, prevention, protection, and relief and recovery. By speaking the global WPS language, we can better communicate NATO's role within this agenda to the wider WPS community. This will also allow us for a tighter relationship between our work in the alliance and the national efforts of allies and partners, as they are often structured around the UN pillars. Strengthening NATO's connection with national WPS priorities is indeed one of my priorities, as I believe it will be key in bolstering our collective achievement and reaching sustainable change across the alliance. To support this effort at the political level, I hosted the first meeting of NATO WPS, Gender Equality and Feminist Foreign Policy Leadership at NATO HQ in January, and I plan to make this an annual event. The meeting helped me deepen my reflection during the consultation for the policy update and reinforce our network. And I'm glad to be here today with you, Gita, and see other WPS leaders in the room. This ties to my third reflection, which is the recognition of the crucial need for gender-responsive leadership. It means that both men and women alike, across NATO in political and military roles, must be engaged and accountable for advancing gender mainstreaming and gender equality. We know that leadership engagement is essential for effective implementation of our political and military goals in all areas, and this is not different for women, peace and security. Before concluding, I would like to say a few words on Ukraine. I know others after me, starting with Julia Pajewska, and also from among the speakers in the room, will refer to Ukraine, to the work that we do as an alliance, but also at a national level. But I would like to just share with you how this has changed our way of working at NATO, and from a reflection, from a gender, integrating a gender conflict analysis in the work we do on an everyday basis, on a weekly basis, on our update, but also in the way in which we carry on our project. And the main achievement, it was just mentioned by the Director Klein. When we started, I started my mandate only 4 weeks before the full-scale invasion. So this has a direct impact on the way in which I'm working. And I'm very glad now to see how this work and this engagement at different levels led to the start of this project, based on an unprecedented number of women who joined the armed forces in order to defend their own country, challenging society norms and stereotypes. So part of my reflection was commissioning a rapid assessment of the armed forces in Ukraine throughout a gender lens to better understand the needs. And one of the challenges that emerged was the lack of appropriate equipment, namely body armor, uniform fit for women. I would like to underline that this problem is a shared concern across the alliance as well. So none of us has the perfect equipment. So we have some parts in some allies, but we are far from having the full equipment tailor-made for women bodies. I visited Kiev, I spoke with service women, I listened to their needs. I then spoke with the Deputy Minister of Defense to understand how they were addressing the problem and how NATO could help. I met with representatives of NGOs that are producing uniform tailored on female anthropomorphic data, and I saw that things can be done in a different way. Last month, in cooperation with the NGO Armed Women Now, we brought these uniforms, body armor, boots and female military underwear to NATO for an exhibition during the last defense ministerial meeting. You cannot imagine how many colleagues, from ministers to ambassadors, from generals to officers, shared their surprise in learning that service women, and as I said, in Ukraine and in other countries alike, have to wear male uniforms that make them less comfortable and consequently less safe, unable to protect themselves adequately while fighting for their own country. I am therefore very pleased to announce that throughout NATO Comprehensive Assistance Package for Ukraine, we will fund an initial production of 10,000 bulletproof vests, 10,000 winter uniforms, and 10,000 combat boots for service women in the armed forces of Ukraine. Allow me to personally thank the US for strongly supporting our project, and our allies Canada, Denmark, Finland, Iceland, Luxembourg, the Netherlands, North Macedonia and Norway for their important financial contribution to this initiative. I just learned before starting this roundtable that other allies are willing to commit more funding to this initiative and to the continuation of this, to respond to the needs of the armed forces. So I know that this is just the first project in the beginning, how we can translate the Women, Peace and Security principle into action, moving into concrete steps that will make a difference. I now look forward to hearing your perspective on these issues, which will affect our work and are best addressed throughout collaboration and the sharing of knowledge and strategies. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Irene. You should all have in front of you the WPS new policy, and that's what we're going to be focusing on today in our discussion, is the implementation of that policy. And we'll take a moment to reflect as well together on the best practices, challenges, and lessons learned that we have all together learned over time in advancing women's and girls' participation, protection, and security in conflict zones and in the security sector worldwide. So my job is to moderate the conversation. We have a very short time, unfortunately, to discuss these important issues, and I have the unhappy task of being the timekeeper as well. But just so that you have a roadmap for our discussion today, we're going to be separating the conversation into 2 rounds of reflections from our guests. And in the spirit of the summit, I'll ask that you frame your remarks around the following 3 core objectives and emerging WPS priorities. First, the implementation of the new policy that I just talked about. This policy not only demonstrates our unwavering support for the people of Ukraine, but also addresses the critical issue of protecting women and girls from all forms of gender-based violence, including conflict-related sexual violence in areas of war, conflict, and crisis. Second, the complex landscape of modern security challenges that we must confront, which include emerging threats stemming from advances in technology and artificial intelligence. These threats, such as gender disinformation and misinformation, as well as technology-facilitated gender-based violence, pose significant barriers to women's meaningful participation in peace, political, and security-related processes. And third, by recognizing the interconnected nature of these issues and taking proactive measures to address them, NATO is not only standing in solidarity with Ukraine, but also working towards a more secure and inclusive future for all. Together, we can combat gender-based violence, promote women's empowerment, and support the people of Ukraine in their pursuit of peace and stability. So our objectives for today's discussion stand firmly on the promise of the UN Security Council Resolution 1325 and the persistence of women civil society leaders, particularly from the Global South, who simply said, "Nothing about us without us." This is why the US continues to prioritize women's leadership and meaningful participation in all stages of conflict and crisis. In 2017, in fact, the US further codified its commitment with the bipartisan passage of the Women, Peace and Security Act, which made the US the first country in the world with a comprehensive law on WPS. Of course, none of this would have been possible without the leadership of Senator Shaheen, who we are honored to have with us here today. Senator, I know that we'll be hearing from you soon. I'd also like to congratulate Irene and her team on the release of the new policy. I can tell you these undertakings are no small task, and I'm sure all of you will agree with me that integrating WPS across NATO's 3 core tasks of collective defense, crisis management, and cooperative security is essential for achieving lasting peace and stability. So with all of that in mind, I would now like to begin our first round of remarks from our distinguished guests. And with that, I'd like to welcome the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Belgium, Minister Labib. I would like to invite you to share your perspective on the critical role NATO allies and partners share in addressing the challenges and opportunities presented by technological advancements for women in the defense sector.
Thank you very much, Special Representative Iran Felin, and thank you, Ambassador Gupta, for hosting this very, very important event. I cannot imagine, indeed, a NATO summit without a good conversation on women, peace and security. And I also started as a Minister of Foreign Affairs in 2022, so I'm used to now. And who better than you can lead us through this process. And I thank also all the participants for their insightful remarks. My country has always been a staunch advocate of the 1325 agenda and is now already implementing its 4th national action plan on the question of women, peace and security. And this plan has guided our action both nationally and internationally. It follows a very fundamental principle that, women play an important role in de-escalating conflict and peace building. They should have their, seat always at the negotiating table. If we want to build sustainable peace, women's meaningful participation should be taken into account in all aspects related to peace. This has been, by the way, demonstrated many times in history. And one of the most famous examples happened in 2011 in the Philippines, when Muslim women helped and trained by UN women conducted negotiations with the Moro Islamic Liberation Front. A year later, they managed to put an end to one of the longest conflicts in the world, nearly 40 years. And more recently, a grandmother negotiator halts violence and frees hostages in Ituri, DRC, one of Africa's most war-torn regions. Her name is Petronil Vaweka, and she won last year the Women Building Peace Awards. Allow me, if I may, to share with you a few words about her methods. She said she always has the same method. She said she looked the belligerents calmly in the eyes. She speaks respectfully but firmly to the parts of their psyche that remember traditional values and the voices of their mothers. Do they want always to live in war? How do they expect to build futures for themselves? Peace for their own children with violence that only isolates them further. So she said, I began by seeing these men not as enemies but as human beings. They want to show everyone their strength, but many have become violent out of despair or fears. And so I listen to their stories, and at the end, these men understand that I have taken risks to come speak to them, and they respect me. So Petronil has recently worked as a trainer in conflict management for the effort by the DRC and the United Nations to stabilize this very troubled zone still now in Ituri. So coming back to the NATO agenda on WPS, I'm very pleased that NATO's new Women, Peace and Security policy, which will be adopted later on during this summit, is an ambitious and actionable document. We want to stress the importance of a full, equal and meaningful participation of women, of gender-responsive leadership and of horizontal ownership of this agenda across the entire organization. The main goal now must be to fully integrate this WPS policy across NATO's 3 core tasks. And we certainly need also to intensify our outreach towards our partners to make sure they associate themselves with this policy. And of course, we need a robust plan, the necessary financial... Sorry, I need to drink. To have the necessary financial and human resources. Otherwise, it will only remain a set of good intentions. Our action certainly is even more important that we see that women and girls nowadays face declining safety and security globally, from Ukraine to Afghanistan, from the Democratic Republic of Congo to Myanmar. The prevalence of sexual and gender-based violence, including conflict-related sexual violence, demands our full attention. And to illustrate maybe the commitment of Belgium, I would like to share with you some examples. We are, for instance, currently tabling a resolution at the Human Rights Council on technology-facilitated gender-based violence, and we trust we can rely on your support in this endeavor. In the framework of our presidency of the EU, which we have just concluded 3 days ago, we co-organize a European Union task force dedicated to WPS with a special focus on the Sahel region. In Ukraine, we have allocated a voluntary contribution of €1 million to the UN team of experts on the rule of law and sexual violence in conflict. We have also supported the UN Humanitarian and Peace Trust Fund, supporting women civil society with a contribution of €600,000 focusing on Ukraine and Moldova. We also contributed for an payment of €6 million for the NATO Ukraine cap for hospitals. And across the African continent, our Egmont Institute has been working on women leaderships program for years in countries such as Niger, Senegal, and DRC. And I had the chance to participate actively myself in one of those programs and to attend a very moving graduation ceremony in Kenya. So through these programs, we contribute to the development of skills and competences of leader women that are working in key sectors, including in the field of peace and security. So these are just a few examples that I wanted to share with you. But before concluding, allow me maybe to briefly tackle the situation in Afghanistan, where women are suffering and disappearing from the public space. Despite its limited results, the recent meeting in Doha should be seen as an opportunity to withdraw the attention of the global community on the fate of Afghan women and girls, because we cannot let them down. So since the return of the Taliban, Belgium has resolutely maintained its support to women and girls in the country through multilateral agencies such as UN Women, but also by directly supporting local civil society organizations, among others. We have been funding shelter houses for women's rights defenders in Afghanistan, where women activists and their families can find a refuge if they are under attack, and where they can start a project of relocation. So their situation may sometimes seem hopeless, but it is our collective duty to keep acting for them. So, dear colleagues, I'm really convinced that NATO and its partners should take a leading role in the women, peace and security agenda. We really hope WPS will keep getting a prominent place at the NATO summits with all allies at the table, but you can count on me to keep working in that direction. Thank you very much.
Thank you for those remarks. I now call upon the Foreign Minister of Slovenia, Minister Tanja Fajon, who will talk with us about the best practices of how Slovenia coordinates with other NATO allies and partners on the implementation of their National Action Plan for Women, Peace and Security.
Thank you very much. Good morning or good day to everyone. Thank you, Ambassador Dr. Gupta, also Special Representative Feline, for organizing this event and for the wonderful hospitality. I'm truly delighted that we have gathered on the margins of a historic NATO summit to discuss the Women, Peace, Security agenda in the city known for its suffrage movement. As the reality of women and girls around the world turns increasingly hostile, I am proud that our alliance continues to advance WPS agenda, exhibiting our shared values and resolve. Today's event and the new NATO WPS policy attest to the fact that gender equality and the Women, Peace and Security agenda remain at the heart of our endeavors. Through them, we seek increased operational effectiveness and situation awareness, and we safeguard the freedom and security of our population. NATO and its allies have an important role to play in advancing WPS agenda. Our success serves to promote the agenda across the globe. And it is a responsibility of each ally to contribute its part. Slovenia is committed to this as NATO ally and as current UN Security Council member. Our commitment was shown also by dedicating recently a panel discussion to WPS agenda in the NATO at the main event of 20th anniversary of our membership in Alliance in March in Slovenia, and Irene, you were there. It was a wonderful discussion. And before continuing, I wish to recognize the presence also of Yulia Pajovska, a Ukrainian medic, and express my country's full solidarity to Ukraine, with Ukraine and its people. Slovenia's support to Ukraine remains unwavering, and Russia's unjustifiable war of aggression against Ukraine has caused immense suffering of Ukrainian population. And I'm inspired by very bravery and resilience of Ukrainian women, including those in the battlefield. They prove not only willingness but also ability to serve in combat positions as commanders, overcoming many biases about women in the army. And in this respect, I commend the US for being the driving force in developing MyCap, WPS project for bulletproof vests and uniforms adjusted to the needs of women in the Ukrainian army. And that was, Irina, I was telling you, we wish to contribute, so there is willingness to do more in the future. Tomorrow, our leaders will endorse NATO's new WPS policy that offers an ambitious way forward for integrating gender perspectives across everything that NATO does, from defending our nations to deterring our adversaries, preventing and managing crises, and working with many partners around the world. And I wish to focus my remaining thoughts especially on the latter: political dialogue. NATO's partnership frameworks and tools, capacity building, initiatives, trainings and exercises are important to ensure further advancement and the visibility of WPS agenda. We should seek opportunities to exchange best practices and best lessons learned. And I'm therefore very pleased that WPS has been included in the new strategy for enhancing NATO's engagement with the southern neighborhood. We should also recognize the important work that NATO and allies do through its operations and missions. In particular, I mentioned KFOR and NMI. More work needs to be done by ensuring better gender parity with our contingents. With the Western Balkans, so the region that I am coming from, being of strategic importance to my country, Slovenia, our WPS efforts are focused especially on this region. And in order to ensure women's full, equal and meaningful participation in peace and security policies, engaging with civil society and coordination with private sector partners will remain very important for us. However, our success and our credibility depends to a notable degree on our own internal NATO and allied progress in implementing the WPS agenda, and we must do our part. NATO has the potential to become the most powerful example of WPS implementation, and we very much look forward to its realization. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Minister Fayoum. I would just request that we all keep our remarks to 3 minutes, please, because I'm nervous that we won't make it in time for the Secretary's reception. Let me now call upon the Minister of Justice of Romania, Alina Gorgheu. Could you share how Romania aligns its efforts in implementing the WPS National Action Plan and how it is linked to the NATO WPS policy to ensure the safety and protection of women?
Thank you very much for hosting us. I will be short. It is an honor, dear friends, to share my thoughts with you. As Minister of Justice, as a mother, I know the hurdles we women face in all fields. Fairness and justice must be guiding principles in the implementation of women, peace and security objectives. I want to start with a simple truth. You cannot do justice for women without women in justice. Without true justice, there can't be real peace. And my country, Romania, knows this well. Russia's war is at our borders. We see firsthand the horrors lived by Ukrainian victims of Putin's war. Women are vital to sustaining communities post-conflict, and we see that what drives peoples to overcome the trauma of war and aggression is the hope that justice will be served. I try to put a new perspective into the discussion. We have the duty to bring justice to the heart of the women, peace and security agenda. Romania provides a successful recipe for women's involvement in social stability. In our justice system, women account for almost 80% of all judges in the High Court, and over 70% of employees in my ministry are women. The whole system in Romania supports the effort, and we are a NATO member state that spends 2.5% of its GDP on the defense sector. A part of that goes to implementing the WPS agenda, and this is very important for us and for everybody. We will soon adopt our second national strategy for 2024 through 2028. This document includes lessons learned from the Romanian and US's co-presidency of the national focal points from 2023, and we strive to have a decision-making process through gender lenses. Romania's action plan is built on the 4 pillars of the Resolution 1325, prevention, protection, participation, relief and recovery. And we know as a fact that traditional gender norms dictate that men must be on the front lines and women must stay at home. But we know better in Romania. Women leaders don't go to war. Increasing the number of women in security fields is a choice for a future with less war. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Minister. Thank you for emphasizing the importance of representation. I'd now like to invite Ambassador Eric Nelson, who serves as the Associate Director of the George C. Marshall European Center for Security Studies, and he'll talk to us about how the implementation of a WPS policy can address key disinformation and misinformation operations tactics and narratives that are employed by Russia.
Thank you, Ambassador Gupta. I'd like to reinforce many of the good points made and talk about, I think, principally about how we need to develop a stronger gender-responsive leadership, as you describe it. When you look at disinformation, it reminds us that warfare and conflict today is conducted in multiple domains, in cybersecurity, in lawfare, in economic realm, in disinformation. And that's why we talk more and more about total defense. We talk about resilience, about society's ability to resist these attacks, to stay standing and to recover and rebuild. All of these domains have women fully represented and fully impacted. And responding adequately in all of these domains requires women fully engaged. The full implementation, full participation of women should be intuitive to all of us, to all leaders. But what we see is Russians are directing their disinformation efforts against women. We see these disinformations specifically targeted to marginalizing women, to keeping them from participating and to discouraging them from leading. So we see that the Russians know that this is a vulnerability of ours, that disinformation is intended to sow discord, to undermine cohesion, and to trigger to trigger division among us over women's empowerment, sadly, is not difficult to do. So our response needs to be very deliberate. And our response needs to recognize that this targeting is getting at a fundamental requirement, that we respond in a way that demonstrates total defense. So I see that it's very critical that we talk more and more about how leadership needs to be deliberate and needs to be proactive, recognizing that women, peace, and security is intuitive. And women, peace, and security needs to be imperative when you look at this broad array of threats. It needs to become an imperative so that one day it's inherent in our approach to our defense and security. We cannot consider that women, peace, and security is work to be shouldered principally by women. We cannot consider that this is something that's nice to have, that we can achieve during peacetime, or that it's something that we require new resources to achieve. This is about completing our team and filling empty seats or creating seats at the table. And this is not a zero-sum game, which is where the disinformation wants us, how disinformation wants us to think of it. And we see in our recruiting shortfalls that we are failing to incorporate women when so many allies cannot even staff our services. Obviously, we should do a better job, and we could succeed if we thought about how women are a principal part of our response. WPS needs to be central in our thinking of strategic competition, because our strategic competition is also about our values. If we are truly about empowerment of women versus subjugation of women, if we truly want to create deterrence and collective security and defend human rights, then our actions must match our values, and we must walk the talk. We need to turn vision to action, lead with force and fidelity. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ambassador Nelson. Finally, it's a great honor for me to invite Yulia Payevska to speak. She is our 2023 International Women of Courage awardee and founder of Tyra's Angels, to talk about your organization's support to the Ukrainian army.
Я буду говорити українською, я перепрошую, моя англійська далека від ідеалу, я не хочу вас катувати. Як там з перекладом, я не розумію.
I don't understand. Do you hear the interpretation?
Yeah, it works.
Does it work? Do you
Great.
hear the interpretation?
Excuse me,
Thank you.
I'll talk Ukrainian because my English is really not good. I'm not happy about it. So. But Ukrainian, я вважаю, що українська мова мусить звучати в цьому будинку і в цій країні так само, як і всі інші.
Just like any other language.
Звичайно, я дуже горжусь тим, що я знаходжусь разом з вами тут. Я дуже вдячна, і це велика честь для мене, але я не буду витрачати багато часу на політику. Тому що в моїй країні війна, і ми не маємо часу на речі, які забирають нашу енергію. У нас конференція «Жінки, мир та безпека». І я в першу чергу хотіла би звернути вашу увагу на безпеку. Це те, що примусило мене 10 років тому долучитись до допомоги Збройним силам. Це те, що свого часу примусило мене підписати контракт зі Збройними силами і як військова брати участь в бойових діях. Це те, що трошки більше, ніж 2 роки примусило мене поїхати в Маріуполь на зустріч війні, на зустріч загрозі, на зустріч безжальному ворогу. Ми, жінки, такі. Ви знаєте, як ми дбаємо про свої домівки. Особливо українки, ми дуже любимо, щоб все вдома було класно. І безпека для дітей, для нашого майбутнього – це найвищий пріоритет для нас. Тому дуже багато жінок ідуть саме вперед, на фронт, на зустріч загрозі. І я думаю, що саме тому я тут зараз, тому що я можу бути тут ефективна. Загроза в іншому місці, але ефективність досягається в різних місцях. Зараз це є моя зброя проти ворога. Вчора я спізнилась на літак через те, що у мене був конект на перельот до Вашингтону. Я спізнилась на літак, тому що коли ми приземлилися, я з'ясувала, що Київ піддався бомбардуванню. У мене взяло більше години часу з'ясувати, що всі мої близькі, рідні і мої друзі в безпеці і цілі, але, на жаль, не всі. Один лікар, якого я знала особисто, загинув в Києві, в Охмадіті. Він якраз проводив операцію хворій дитині. Це абсолютно цивільні люди. Я хочу говорити про безпеку. Це не наші діти, це наші діти. Твої, ваші діти. Це наші спільні діти. Я говорю про майбутнє, про безпеку майбутнього. Якщо не зупинити це зараз, воно прийде до вас. Я вас не лякаю. Я бачила Маріуполь. У мене на очах руйнували 500 000 міст. Ви знаєте мою історію. Але ви не знаєте історії мільйонів українок, які страждають зараз. Форма. Дякую за цю ініціативу і за це. За те, що ви робите, це надзвичайно важливо. У мене немає проблем з формою, моя фігура дозволяє мені користатися чоловічою формою. Але для ефективності жінок на фронті це надзвичайно важливо. Так що я дуже вдячна. Це є складова нашої спільної майбутньої безпеки. Для цього ще треба багато зробити, насправді. Наприклад, я хотіла би попросити вас сприяти розвитку, написанню, можливо, програми психологічної підтримки для військовослужбовців і для цивільних, і особливо для тих жінок, що прийшли полон. Я була в полоні росіян 3 місяці. Це поза межами добра і зла. Я зараз пишу книгу, де буде трошки описаний цей досвід, але я не можу про все писати досі, знов-таки з міркувань безпеки. Тому що багато моїх посестер ще й досі у полоні. Світ змінюється. Росіяни, я присутність їх відчуваю буквально будь-де. Ця надзвичайно ядовита, як сказати, пропаганда проникає навіть сюди. І якщо ви згадаєте цей наратив «Втома від війни», який пішов саме з Росії і використовується навіть тут і зараз. Я психолог. Я хотіла би звернути вашу увагу на захист психологічного середовища, в першу чергу. Бо зброя, головна зброя росіян – це брехня. І жінки дуже тонко відчувають, коли їм брешуть. Нас не обманеш, правда? Будь ласка, зверніть увагу на це. Перемога досягається в голові і в серці. А зброя тільки підтримує цю перемогу. Ми мусимо це зупинити. Я безмежно вдячна за цю можливість. Дякую.
Thank you, Yulia. Thank you so much for your service, your bravery, and your commitment during this war. That attack yesterday was truly horrific. We stand with you and with all of the people of Ukraine. Thank you. Let's move to the second round of our discussion and focus this time on technology-facilitated gender-based violence and its impact on women's leadership as sort of an important component of advocating for women, peace and security policies, laws and accountability to support survivors of technology-facilitated gender-based violence. So with that, let me call Permanent Representative Wernharf of Sweden, who has made some impressive advances in countering TFGBV, the acronym that we've developed for this horrible scourge. If you could please speak to your country's work on this area.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Ambassador Dr. Gupta, and thank you so much, Special Representative Feline, for organizing this very important event. I'm indeed honored to speak here today, and I'm more so honored to speak since I also speak on behalf of all the Nordic countries, actually, and Germany, and Lithuania, and Estonia, and the Czech Republic. We share the same concerns, and we have the same priorities when it comes to this very important work. I'll just make a few remarks, but I think the basis, the starting point is the war in Ukraine and the Russian full-scale invasion. It has particularly affected women and girls, and we also know for sure that a great number of Ukrainian women are fighting to defend their country, and they want to fight to defend their country. And this definitely highlights the need to adopt and develop suitable equipment for all military personnel, not only men. Without the right equipment, women will be exposed to greater risks and will not have the same opportunities to fulfill their tasks. And we think also that we need to ensure that the NATO women, peace and security policy here has to be fully implemented also in the context of Ukraine. In support of Ukraine and in the reconstruction of Ukraine, and that the needs of Ukrainian women in that work also will be heard. We talked about the importance of appropriate body armor, and I'd just like to mention here a novelty which is quite interesting, and that's the use of a 3D scan of a person in order to capture the shape of the body from all angles, in order to personalize the body armor. And this is in fact a gender-neutral approach, but it is of great importance, of course, of crucial importance. But this is not enough. A gender perspective needs to be mainstream into the development of all new military technologies and hardware in order to facilitate full participation by both men and women. But technology should not be seen as something isolated, as an island by itself. A gender perspective needs to cut through all domains, and it needs to be integrated also in doctrine, in training, and in exercises. And also in this latter context, I'd just like to mention that we have the Nordic Center for Gender in Military Operations, which trains staff at all levels and which is an important tool in this work. We also believe that this will enhance decision-making and operational efficiency. And as a member of NATO, of course, we will unrelentlessly work to strengthen this agenda. We all do. And the strengthening of this agenda is also actually to strengthen the whole defense and deterrence work of the alliance. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'd now like to turn to Ambassador O'Neill. Jackie O'Neill is Canada's first Ambassador for Women, Peace and Security, and she will talk to us about the lessons learned in Canada in implementing WPS, particularly in support of NATO missions in Ukraine and at home.
Thank you.
And I request you to stay within 1 minute.
Good morning and good afternoon for everyone with jet lag in the room. We are delighted as Canada. I'll make a few very brief points. We've just appointed our first woman commander, our first head of the Chief of the Defense Staff and head of the Armed Forces in Canada, making her currently the only woman in that role among the alliance. We know Slovenia was there first, but currently the only woman. She's very experienced commanding a NATO mission, comes from the combat arms, and is course, as a highly capable, qualified, professional person and woman, she is already a target of disinformation campaigns, highly coordinated efforts to undermine her and, as a result, undermine the institution and Canadians' trust in her work. So we will have to apply many of our lessons at home as well. I'll make 3 very brief points about lessons that we've learned in Canada, one for each of NATO's 3 core tasks. On defense and deterrence, we recognize that women-led civil society organizations are core to total defense, to resilience, and to deterrence, and we have to work with them, to fund them, and to meaningfully include them in all processes and forums. We know this, and we see this in Ukraine every day. We see women serving in uniform. We see the government stretched beyond its limits to focus on defense. And we see women-led civil society organizations that are playing essential roles that enable the government to do that work. So they've delivering basic services, fundraising for equipment, supporting families, providing psychosocial support that Tyra mentioned, leading healthy reintegration of veterans, countering disinformation, and very importantly, rallying international support, including in the Global South. When it comes to crisis prevention and management, when Canadian Armed Forces were providing a humanitarian mission to support Ukrainians fleeing to Poland, we weren't prepared for the majority of the people we were working with being women and children, to provide health services for pregnant women. We weren't ready to provide care for survivors of conflict-related sexual violence or to watch for signs of human trafficking. So we've updated and tried to integrate better preparation, training, and reflexes in crisis response in our National Action Plan. And lastly, on the core task of security cooperation, we found that women, peace, and security is not only an element of interoperability, essentially, among allies. We have common languages and objectives, but it's also a real door opener for collaboration, real dialogue, and real exchange with militaries around the world, including in the Global South. We found it's important to be deliberate in this. Women, peace, and security is a specific element of the Canada-Ukraine Security Cooperation Agreement, and it could be of others. And I think we all have the opportunity to improve our integration of women, peace, and security in the training that we do with one simple step, which is to set aside or dedicate a specific proportion of spots of the trainings that we offer for women from various militaries and set essentially a minimum standard or quota. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much, Ambassador O'Neill. We'd now like to move to Foreign Minister of Croatia. Minister Rodman, could you highlight the work that Croatia has done to mitigate cyber and hybrid threats that have a disproportionate impact on women?
Thank you so much, Madam Chair. And the summit is about the security investment, of course, and a strong support for Ukraine and value sharing with our partners. But however, this women, peace, security agenda became an integral part of NATO's policies at all levels of the alliance. Croatia has implemented 2 national action plans regarding the WPS, while third is currently being developed. The second plan addressed precisely the impact of hybrid threats, cybersecurity, climate change, and terrorism, all in the context of the women, peace, and security policy. We are constantly investing in initiatives to empower women and girls in the field of cybersecurity, primarily through education and training. The panel on women and security and defense will be held during Zagreb, our capital city, Zagreb Security Forum in October this year. This globally known diplomatic event will be organized by Croatian Hybrid Warfare Research Institute as well as Defense and Security University in Zagreb. In recent years, non-governmental organizations such as Women in Tech Croatia held webinars on cybersecurity as well. The regional conference on cyber violence and cybersecurity with a special focus on youth and women was held in Zagreb 2 years ago via NATO campaign. The upcoming national plan on women, peace and security will devote attention to these topics as well, thereby fully aligning with the new NATO policies. Recently, Croatia has been under heavy attacks from Russian hacker groups, creation the most important hospital in Zagreb, Rebro, aiming to undermine the resilience of Croatian society. Since the beginning of the war in Ukraine, Russian invasion of Ukraine, we have been continuously exposed to hybrid threats of various forms due to our close vicinity to our Western Balkans. As Tanya also mentioned, it's our immediate neighborhood. We know the region, our region that is actually of strategic interest and importance to NATO. Therefore, Croatian institutions and society recognize the patterns of actions our adversaries undertake to destabilize our societies, typically exploiting their most vulnerable members. With its experience from the homeland war, Croatia was also the victim of aggression, and we were a victim, and we know who was culprit. Croatia deeply understands the significance of the problem of women and girls suffering, as well as the importance of their role in conflict prevention, management, and post-conflict activities. Unfortunately, we all witnessed the horrific consequences of Russia's brutal aggression on Ukrainian society, including the most vulnerable, namely the women and girls, particularly concerning conflict-related sexual violence. Dreadful treatment of women and girls continues in Iran, within the Taliban regime in Afghanistan and other autocratic states, and Hadia also mentioned the situation in Afghanistan. Adversaries of the alliance have brought access to modern technologies which they increasingly use to promote the hate speech and discrimination, often targeting women and girls. Consistency and unwavering dedication to protect the rights of women and girls and promote gender equality are fundamental to NATO's and allies' credibility, integrity. Finally, I'm very, very pleased to inform you that Croatian diplomat and a lady, my colleague, Mrs. Vlasta Brklačić, began to serve in European Union Assistance Mission for Ukraine. She's now there. And so Croatia is looking forward to organizing a special discussion panel on women, peace and security during our flagship diplomatic event that is taking place each summer in the town of Dubrovnik in Croatia in July. We stand ready to assist with our experience and expertise. Thank you so much.
Thank you. We look forward to visiting beautiful Croatia in July. Thank you so much for your remarks. I would now like to close out our discussion by inviting Senator Jean Shaheen of New Hampshire to discuss the comprehensive legislation that was adopted, thanks to your leadership, by the U.S. and the importance of bipartisan support for women, peace and security on the Hill.
Well, thank you, Ambassador Gupta. For all of you who wondered why I'm here, it's because I sponsored the legislation that gave the U.S. And I'm very proud to say we were the first country to pass women, peace and security, the only country to have done it legislatively so far. And I think that was really important because it was a learning opportunity, and it remains to be an opportunity for us to build support for the agenda, to encourage bipartisan support. I had Senator Capito from West Virginia, who was a Republican, was my co-sponsor on the legislation. Unfortunately, she couldn't be here today, but she continues to support this effort. And there have been a lot of really impressive comments made by everyone this morning, but one of the things that I haven't heard is the importance of continuing to educate people about why this is important. You know, it's kind of like the medical trials that we did in the U.S. for such a long time, and we only used men in our medical trials because we didn't realize that women were actually different. Well, it's the same challenge, I think, that we've got a job to educate people about the difference that it makes to have women at the table. And everybody in this room understands that. But as I talk to some of my colleagues in the Senate and Congress, they don't get why it matters. And so when you say to them, you know, if women are at the table, the negotiating table, when a peace deal is signed, there's a 35% better chance that it will last for 15 years or longer than if they're not at the table. When we've got that data to show people what a difference it makes to have women integrated throughout, it's really critical. And I think we get there by doing the things that all of you have talked about. And I liked Ms. O'Neill's point that as we're thinking about training exercises in NATO, I know we don't want to do quotas, but goals would be good. No? Having goals for a number of women in NATO leadership would be good. You know, just as we've got 2% of GDP for spending on defense, we ought to have a goal for women's participation. So I think a lot of exciting work is being done now, and thank you to Ukraine for the lessons that you are giving us as we think about the role of women. I had the opportunity to meet with several women in the Ukrainian military a year or so ago, and one of the things they said to me that I have talked about frequently at home is they said, give us the weapons so that we can fight so you don't have to. Mm-hmm. So we so appreciate what you are doing. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Senator Shaheen. Thank you for your leadership. We couldn't function without it, so thank you so very much. I'd now like to turn back to my colleague Irene to summarize the discussion today before we close the session.
Thank you very much, and thank you to all of you for your contribution. It's clear that we would have needed more time to listen to you, but we don't want to make Secretary Blinken waiting too long. And so I will wrap up with some reflection, because I think that the conversation we had today is particularly relevant and valuable as we look into two significant milestones, the NATO 75th anniversary and the nearly 25 years of the United Nations Security Council Resolution 1325. These milestones serve as stark reminders of our collective commitment to defending democracy, individual liberty, and the rule of law, while advancing gender equality, promoting peace, and ensuring the security of all individuals. Celebrating anniversaries also prompt us to reflect on the future, and when it comes to the future of the Alliance, the Women, Peace and Security agenda is as relevant as it has ever been. But as we all know, our fight for gender equality is never ending. With this new policy in place, I now look to translate this framework into actionable steps. And as it was mentioned, as part of these efforts, I will focus on working closely with civilian and military leadership across NATO to advance women, peace and security and gender equality in the years ahead. I'm looking forward to supporting the next Secretary General Mark Rutte, as I was pleased and honored to do for the last 2 years with Secretary Jens Stoltenberg. I will do it throughout the Women, Peace and Security Leadership Task Force in place at NATO, and I call on all of you to do the same with your respective professional context and on a global stage. I ask you to lead by example and be an inspiration for the new generation. And this is exactly to respond to what Senator Shaheen said, is to educate, not give for granted that the others understand. And the example of the uniform I made before, it's clearly like this. I had the majority of colleagues at NATO asking why we were, setting this exhibition there. And they said, why do we need to talk about this? It's clear that we are different. And I said, yes, now it seems clear. But then concretely, nobody did this. And it's exactly about the try and the medicine. So nothing is granted yet when we talk about gender differences and then translate into women, peace and security. So we have come a long way, but we still have a long way to go to achieve gender equality in the peace and security sector and beyond it. But the fact that we are all here working together, renewing today our promise to a full implementation of the principle embedded in Women, Peace and Security agenda assures me that we are moving full steam ahead in the right direction. Working together, we can shape the future we want, the future we need. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Irene, and thank you very much to all of you for your comments and remarks. There's not much left to say other than to really commit together to renew our promise to create a more inclusive, secure, and peaceful world. And the only way to do that is to make sure that women can meaningfully participate in all levels of the security sector. So thank you very much. We're now going to gather in the Ben Franklin room on the 8th floor for the reception hosted by Secretary Blinken, which is to begin at 11 a.m. sharp. So you're going to have to make your way quickly to the elevators. There'll be volunteers guiding you to take you upstairs. Thank you so very much. One round of applause for everyone.